Hi, welcome to the Second Rainbow Coalition Reading Group. We are reading The Young Lords by Johanna Fernandez, and we are going to start things off today with the Second Rainbow Coalition Statement of Unity. Sister Gabby, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sister Zen. I'll be reading a Statement of Unity preface. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to quote-unquote reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the ego sunk its claws into other nations, making a war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright sorry, I lost where it was. And either annexing them or outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions, and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As Hugh P. Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity and nationality face a common enemy that's destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life. Food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from the oppression of the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined the coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses have developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none has established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a quote-unquote race struggle. He said that's a class struggle, goddammit. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition. Therefore, the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire oppressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the United Front that will best serve our class of liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we establish our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all our organizations and our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. It is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. all members of the coalition: New African Black Panther Party, Black Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, Nassau, North Alabama School for Organizers, New Era Young Lords, and American Indian Movement Northeast Woodland Chapter. The 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Number 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Number 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Number 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And number 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. And that is the statement of unity. You're muted, Sister Zen. There we go. Oh, wait. Or are you still muted? Oh, are you still muted, Sister Zen? You're muted.
Oh, here I am talking away. I didn't realize I was still muted. I said, thank you, Comrade Gabby. And also I saw while you were reading that we've been joined by Chairman Subi of the New Area Young Lords. Welcome,
hell yeah.
Subi. Thank you for hopping in here.
Hello, Comrade Subi. Pleasure to meet you.
No, likewise. How's everything?
Everything's awesome, man.
How you doing?
Not too bad. I seen the message and I was like, you know what? I haven't got to participate, so let me hop in for a little while I have some time. So
that's what's
right on.
Perfect timing. We're just about to dive into the last section of chapter 4, I believe, of the Young Lords. Okay. So, yeah. I hope you guys had fun this weekend for Cha-Cha's birthday. I've been seeing pictures everywhere.
I didn't get to go, but I know a couple of comrades here on this chat probably was there. I know the Chicago chapter definitely hosted it with them. So from what I seen, it looked amazing. I was actually jealous I couldn't make it, but me and Cha-Cha share the same birthday month, so I had to celebrate mine, my way.
Right on. Well, happy birthday
right on.
to you
too. I have the same birthday as Cha-Cha.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Lucky lady.
Wait, Chacha's birthday's in August, right?
Yeah, August 8th.
Oh, my birthday is also in August. I'm August 2nd.
Bunch of Leos.
Yeah.
And we've got another comrade joining too. Awesome.
Hell yeah. Joe just had a birthday too. Comrade Joe just had a birthday too.
We have 11 people. That's awesome.
Record breaking, I'm pretty sure. All right, let me just zoom this in a little bit here, make it easier for y'all to see. Can everybody see the screen share okay?
Yep.
Sweet. All right, let's dive right on in. We've got about 10 pages to read today, so I'll read a couple and then, throw the mic out there for whoever wants to read next. Police watch. In September 1969, the Young Lords began to experiment with a neighborhood police watch. The idea evolved out of the relationships the group fostered with many residents of El Barrio during the garbage offensive. The Young Lords' Minister of Information, Pablo Guzman, described it as a people's patrol, an underground movement of the people on the block in the Latin community, similar to the way the Panthers had started out in Oakland. The Black Panthers' decision to legally bear arms to protect the descendants of slaves from police violence challenged the country's deeply rooted power in relations. Though unstated, the tradition became enshrined in the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, as the right to bear arms has always been understood to apply exclusively to Europeans and their descendants. The reasons are found in 18th century settler project that became the United States, which rested on the violent appropriation of land from the native people of North America and control of enslaved African labor. In self-defense, the indigenous population responded with an early form of guerrilla war, and Africans organized slave rebellions. In this contest, the emerging government weaponized Europeans of all classes, a measure necessary to secure, maintain, and extend the emerging borders of the state. Excuse me. As scholar of Native American history, Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz recounts, in 1658, the colony ordered every settler home to have a functioning firearm, subsidized those who couldn't afford them, and fined homes without functioning weapons and individuals who traveled to public meetings without them. In time, this became the basis of forced militia and slave patrol inscription among white men of all classes. The Black Panthers' armed patrol units therefore touched a nerve. They opened a Pandora's box. In its challenge to one of the longest standing building blocks of white supremacy, the Black Panther Party's bold action was too destabilizing for the state to allow to stand. A tsunami of violent acts of repression followed, led by police and the FBI's counterintelligence program, generally referred to as, they spelled it wrong, COINTELPRO. No, they didn't. Never mind. COINTELPRO. The secret unit was established in 1956 to subvert the U.S. left and other organizations, individuals engaged in protest. Its self-professed aim was to destroy movements by frustrating goals and encouraging violence, internecine struggles within its organization. By one estimate, 28 Black Panthers were killed in confrontation with police in 1968 and 1969. Still, the Young Lords proceeded to adapt a version of the BPP's police patrol. Unsurprisingly, neighbors looked on. According to Guzman, the idea gained credibility after the stabbing death of a brother on the block of an East Harlem resident, Mingo El Loco, when he tried to intervene in a neighborhood brawl in September 1969.
So Suzanne?
Yeah?
Oh, I was gonna say that your audio keeps on cutting in and out. Just want to say that.
Okay, I'm gonna turn my headset on. Give me just a moment. My apologies.
No worries.
It usually helps.
Background noise from the train going by, honking their horn loud as shit too.
There we go. That's way better.
That better? Okay.
Yep.
Where was I? Okay. The Lords blamed the police for Mingo's death because they, quote, let him bleed in the street, did not call an ambulance, and transported him to the hospital in a police car where he died. Mingo was a good neighbor and a friend of the Lords. He loaned them his car, distributed their literature, and helped with neighborhood recruitment, and the community was, quote, up in arms. Amid the tragedy, approximately 200 neighborhood residents volunteered to help build a police patrol network in the 5 blocks surrounding the Young Lords East Harlem office. With the repressive backlash against the Black Panthers police patrol in full view, the Young Lords concluded that the work of protecting the community from police violence be led by autonomous affiliate network of neighbors circles. Those who signed up began their work in collective discussions, held in their own apartments, on strategies for sizing up a police crisis on the spot. So give me just a moment, I gotta let Yessie back in. There we go. The goal was to avert an escalation of police violence and resist unlawful arrests. The Young Lords believed that over time, these networks and interventions in neighborhood conflicts could replace the police. They argued that the work of self-determination begins by putting to use the untapped skills and creativity of community members towards larger collective goals. According to Guzman, those who volunteered were mostly working men and women in their 40s, whose family responsibilities did not allow them to commit to full-time organizing. Although they did not call themselves Young Lords, they supported the culture of resistance that the group sought to cultivate in the neighborhood. According to one former member, quote, we relate it to an iceberg. Most of the iceberg is underwater, but part of it is above water. That would be like the Young Lords office and the people that you see in berets, end quote. The Young Lords were already being monitored by the New York Police Department, so their support of community police patrols proved particularly provocative to law enforcement. The police department's strategic response appeared to undercut the organization's influence by targeting not the Purple Beret Young Lords, but rather those who participated in their rallies and events. According to Guzman, the police dealt repression on the people. We've had several actions in the streets, mini riots, mini rebellions, and the pigs didn't touch the young lords hardly, but the people were the ones getting busted. Still, by grounding their anti-police brutality initiatives in circles led by older people in the community, the Young Lords' organizing approach differed from that of Black Panthers. Their more tempered approach to police misconduct curbed adventurous tendencies among younger rebellious recruits who might have been quick to engage, excuse me, in isolated and risky one-on-one confrontations with the police. The activities and spirit of the community patrol networks flickered on and off until 1971, sometimes more brightly than others. They offered a rich laboratory within the Young Lords, or within which the Young Lords advanced the re-envisioning of society and its reorganization in the interest of the people. Beginning with their earliest campaigns, the Young Lords continued to forge a community organizing strategy. They combined Panther survival programs with their own fusion of traditional local grassroots campaigns that, through militant disruption, made demands on the city's sites of power. All right, who would like to read next? Anybody? If not, I'll
I
keep
can
going.
read.
Okay, awesome. Go for it, Yessie.
Building structure. The opening of the office served to professionalize the work of the Young Lords. With their standards of operation and community connections raised, they focused on consolidating and adapting the organizational structure they inherited from the Chicago group and the Black Panthers. Leading members of the New York group did so in consultation with the Chicago Young Lords at the Chicago-based conference. Like the Panthers, the Lords envisioned themselves as both the Revolutionary Army and embryonic government of a future liberated nation. Their leadership body was called the Central Committee, a name associated with the standing administrative bodies of communist parties from the Soviet Union and China to Cuba. The Young Lords Central Committee was composed of a chairman and 4 chief ministers. Each minister was in charge of a corresponding area of party life. Defense, finance, information, or education. The original Central Committee included Felipe Luciano as chairman, Juan Gonzalez as Minister of Education, Pablo Guzman as Minister of Information, Juan F. Ortiz as Minister of Finance, and David Perez as Defense Minister. As the Young Lords spread beyond New York City in 1970, Field was added to the list of ministries, which was responsible for erecting new branches of the organization and expanding its geographical reach. Each mirrored the major branches of government and areas of development that a revolutionary government might erect. Excuse me. Each ministry was responsible for organizing a series of programs and routine activities such as the daily breakfast program that sustained the organization and the involvement of its members. According to founding member Juan Gonzalez, the information ministry handled all the flyers, put out the newspaper, did the press conference, or basically put out the perspective of the organization to the public. The education ministry handled the political education classes and all internal education. Defense handled the security of the organization, the physical training, the defense of different offices of the organization. Finance collected the money from the parlantes, raised money and gave stipends for the food of the membership. Basically handled all the finances. The field ministry was in charge of the community organizing programs, starting new chapters, starting new branches. While the ministries existed throughout the organization's history, rarely did they all exist at once. In this early period, while the organization was experiencing mass growth, the education and field ministries were prominent. The most constant were defense and finance. On the ground, each ministry consisted of ranking officers, including deputy ministers, captains, lieutenants, and cadre. Cadre?
Yep.
Cadre.
Yeah, cadre.
What's cadre?
If I remember correctly, a cadre or cadre, whichever way you pronounce it, is an affiliated
group.
member. Yeah. Yeah, cadre.
Oh. Thank you. New word of the day. The term, I guess there's a definition. The term cadre referred to at the large, the term cadre referred to the at-large membership of the organization. Young Lord Richie Perez explains further that each ministry recruited people and had full lords and lords in training so that you might be an LIT in the defense ministry or in the information ministry, for example. At the Chicago conference, the Chicago Young Lords also briefed the New York group on the resolutions of a meeting held days earlier at the Black Panther headquarters in Oakland. Writing only days later, an FBI informant cited the conference's goals. The Black Panthers had called the meetings to train members of the Young Patriots and the Young Lords in how to organize and operate on a nationwide scale. Although no transcript exists of the meeting, Black Panther Mumia Abu-Jamal traveled from Philadelphia to participate in it. He remembers that matters discussed included security, the early identification of government provocateurs, and new membership rosters, adherence to the party's internal chain of command, and party discipline to minimize their impact. The importance of assigning formal leadership roles to talented recruits and the integration of membership into the life and activities of the party through this process. Through meetings like these, where organizational strategies and challenges were assessed in the context of a pre-existing structural model, the Puerto Rican radicals in Chicago and New York got a head start on the otherwise lengthy process of organization building. For the New York Young Lords, significant political decisions and organizational challenges lay ahead. COINTELPRO was engaging in a series of repressive and frequently unlawful actions to contain the BPP's impact within the new left. FBI informants misleadingly reported that in the October meeting between the Chicago Young Lords and the Young Patriots and the BPP, there was a preliminary talk about the formation of a BPP-led North American Liberation Front, an underground guerrilla-style combat unit based in remote mountain areas of the United States whose purpose was to destabilize the U.S. government. The proposal to engage in armed guerrilla actions was espoused by Panther leader Eldridge Cleaver and his supporters. It was one of the least supported political strategies within the BPP. For example, days after the West Coast Conference, Fred Hampton organized a Rainbow Coalition press conference and countermarch in Chicago that challenged the armed struggle orientation of the Days of Rage against armed struggle orientation of the Days of Rage actions organized by the Weatherman faction of Students for a Democratic Society. According to Chacha, the 2,000-strong march had originally been called by the Young Lords in honor of Pedro Albizu Campos, but it required this broader purpose at the request of Hampton. Hampton thought it was fortuitous that the march had planned to wind through working-class Black American, Puerto Rican, and white neighborhoods because there had been too much talk about armed struggle and not enough work dedicated to organizing the people. The major political current within the BPP, espoused by Huey P. Newton, held that such a move was premature and not supported by the masses of Black people. Instead, the organization should focus on several programs to address the socioeconomic needs of the Black community. The process of meeting community needs, Newton argued, would build Black self-determination and radical political organization independent of the state. However, balancing Newton's position alongside the organization's politics of armed self-defense proved to be a challenge. Aided by covert COINTELPRO subversion tactics, the internal political split would soon produce a violent power struggle in the BPP. As a new organization that embraced the vanguard leadership of the BPP, the New York Young Lords would have to navigate these politically treacherous waters. As seen in the Garbage Offensive, the group was committed to militant street action, but its leaders consciously avoided direct confrontations, armed or otherwise, with police. This perspective sought to avoid burdening its membership with legal defense campaigns that might distract from the group's focus on community organizing. During the nascent stage, the organization had a no guns policy. However, the Young Lords, like the Black Panthers, as a matter of political principle, upheld the right of all racially oppressed people to armed self-defense against white supremacy and racist police violence. The police responded to this position with relentless repression, especially against the Black Panthers. The potential political threat these organizations posed to the status quo was clear. Earlier in 1967, a press conference at the first meeting of the Organization of Latin American Solidarity in Cuba, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee leader Stokely Carmichael noted that the urban riots in the United States were a form of nascent urban guerrilla war. Of all the organizations of the New Left, the Young Lords and the Black Panthers were most determined to organize and discipline the violence and anger unleashed during urban insurrections from Watts and Detroit to East Harlem. Yet, even though the Young Lords rejected armed confrontations, they embraced the era's militant elan. As images of uniformed revolutionary leaders became iconic, the Young Lords, like the Black Panthers, adopted the uniform grab of Third World guerrilla armies engaged in decolonization struggles around the globe. The Black Berets donned by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara during the Cuban Revolution inspired the purple and black berets, respectively. Both groups also wore black or green military fatigue jackets and combat boots bought at Army and Navy stores. Like the BPP and the Nation of Islam before them, the Young Lords marched in militant formation at large public events. The group's subsequent annual participation in the Puerto Rican Day Parade, beginning in 1970, was especially dramatic in this regard. One member of the organization explains that the visual objective of the Young Lords, like the Black Panthers, was to show the people and the enemy that we meant business and that we were at war. In this totality, the Young Lords' paramilitary image signaled a commitment to organization and discipline. It offered a counter-narrative to mainstream depictions of people of color and Black American and Puerto Rican youth in particular, as incompetent, unruly, and delinquent. Sections of the Old Left, including its Puerto Rican constituents in the Movimiento Pro Independencia, quietly decided the Young Lords. What was that?
That's how you got it. You had it. You did good.
In the Movimiento Pro Independencia, MPI, quietly derided the Young Lords' theoretical appearance, interpreting it as an exhibitionism. Their dismissive posture reflected an experiential gap between two different political generations and a racial one too. The Young Lords were of an appreciably darker hue than their predominantly white counterparts in the Puerto Rican left. The young people of color were daily criminalized and dehumanized in the media and in the streets and schools of post-war city, and the radical style of the Young Lords was a defiant act of self-definition. By fusing symbols of revolutionary struggle with the style established by post-war gangs, the Young Lords and Black Panthers imbued urban culture with the politics of national liberation. After all, their military appearance sent an unequivocal message to the state. The Young Lords would not bow down to the daily abuse, violence, and repression suffered by people of color at the hands of the police. The uniform reinforced their use of the term pig, following the example of the Black Panthers as a way to deflate the indignity and fear that abuse of authority and police violence instilled in poor and working class communities. The logic was that in associating the police with the farm animal, they can neutralize the psychological power held by the police. According to Huey P. Newton, we felt that the police needed a label other than that fear image that they carried in the community. So we used the pig as a rather low-life animal in order to identify the police, and it worked. Speaking about the psychological impact of a fierce exchange in East Harlem between Felipe Luciano and a police officer, Carlito Rovira explains that when I heard him tell a police officer, "Fuck you, you fucking pig, you can't do that to our people," I feel like we became bulletproof. Whatever their intentions in the realm of symbolism and politics, the young lords' bold paramilitary style gear made the organization highly visible. It undoubtedly elicited fear among conservative elements in the community. It was also attractive to the thousands of youth who were inspired by them from afar, came to their offices, marched with them, or formally joined the organization. The 13-point program and platform and organizational structure. In October of '69, Pablo Guzman drafted the 13-point program and platform of the Young Lords in consultation with Juan Gonzalez. Modeled on the 1966 10-point program and platform of the BPP, the document delineated what the Young Lords were for and against and clarified the group's political identity within movement circles. Widely printed in New Left publications and one-page document the one-page document assumed as a given the demands for radical reforms that defined the BPP's platform. It presented a broad vision of solidarity and change through revolutionary struggle, which the Black Panthers themselves had popularized and widely adopted by '69. Written only 3 years apart, the difference between the two platforms reflected the swift radicalization of political consciousness that occurred in the last quarter of the 1960s. The first point of the platform added a new dimension to the New Left's widespread support of decolonization struggles. We want self-determination for Puerto Ricans, liberation on the islands and inside the United States. The Young Lords' explicit defense of the rights of the diaspora was new, prompted by their experience as the children of the mass post-war exodus of Puerto Ricans from the islands to the metropolis. The demand underscored a major 20th century development. The large-scale geographic dispersion of colonial subjects generated by the fallout of colonial rule and resistance to it. In the main, the document called for freedom built on a radical kind of solidarity, especially among subjugated people at home or abroad. And one of the first public uses of the term Latino, point 2 calls for a self-determination for all Latinos, which the group defined as the right, for example, of the Chicano people who built the Southwest to control their lives and their land. Although the assumed cohesion of people living in the United States with ancestral ties in Latin America remains a contested subject, the Young Lords identified unity among these people on the basis of a shared experience with Spanish and U.S. imperialism. Point 3 embraced unity among Black Americans, Latinos, Asians, and Native Americans, people with a shared history of racialized exploitation in the United States who slaved to build the wealth of this country. It read, "Liberation for all third world people." Its corollary, point 8, emphasizes the vision of solidarity attentive to differing class interests. It denounces capitalists and alliances with traders. Among the racially oppressed and lambast, the special role of politicians and middle-class people of color who are paid by the system to lead our people down blind alleys. In point 4, the Young Lords declare We are a revolutionary nationalist and oppose racism. Widely accepted within the New Left, the position held that the intractable history of racism in the United States made the building of race-based organizations central to revolutionary process. In the same point, the Young Lords anticipate the misrepresentation of the worldview by politicians who will make our nationalism into racism and counter their class-based support for the millions of poor white people who are rising up to demand freedom. Other points take a position against imperialism outside of the Americas. Point 9, denounce the American military, calling for the immediate withdrawal of the U.S. military forces and bases from Puerto Rico, Vietnam, and all oppressed communities inside and outside of the U.S. Point 11 declared, we are internationalists and pledge to defend our brothers and sisters around the world who fight for justice and are against the rulers of this country. In the realm of radical reforms, the document concretized the abstract desire for freedom with the call for community control of local institutions and land to increase the possibility that people of color might determine the circumstances of their lives. They also demanded true education of our Afro-Indio culture and Spanish language, with emphasis on the history of struggle against cultural as well as economic genocide by the Spaniards and now the Yankees. The demand reflected the movement's important intervention in production of knowledge in the United States and Europe with its erasure of the cultures, histories, and political and intellectual traditions of the rest of the world. Like the Panthers, the Young Lords demanded freedom for political prisoners and prisoners of war. The former term referred to the growing ranks of people of color disproportionately imprisoned because of their race and class. The latter term described those imprisoned in the course of fighting for freedom. The same point evidenced an early awareness among young radicals of color of the growth of the carceral system and the growing employment of people of color in state bureaucracies following passage of civil rights legislation mid-decade. More than others of its kind, the statement consolidated in one short document the breadth of the new left's social analysis and most radical aspirations. Beyond solidarity with colonized people, it supported women's equality, advocated the seizure of political power, and imagined a new world. Point 10, which called for women's equality, would later be challenged for its simultaneous support of purportedly revolutionary version of machismo. Point 10, sorry, I have to read that again. Point 10, which called for women's equality, would later be challenged for its simultaneous support of a purportedly revolutionary version of machismo. Point 12 employed Second Amendment language and rationale in support of armed self-defense and armed struggle as the only means of liberation, stating when a government oppresses the people, we have the right to abolish it and create a new one. The last point of the program read, we want a socialist society. The Young Lords distributed mimeograph
Yeah.
copies of the program and platform whenever they were active and printed it in Palante, a mimeographed newsletter they launched in November 1969. Later, beginning in February of 1970, when the organization began to produce its newspaper of the same name, the platform appeared on the back pages of each issue. The document introduced its readers to a cohesive body of political ideas, a rare occurrence in the United States, where successive waves of Red Scares had delinked single-issue grassroots organizing from cohesive analysis of social problems such as those historically presented by the left. Drawing on Panther practice, all members of the organization were expected to memorize the document. In addition to imparting its members with a broad sense of purpose, the assimilation of the Young Lords' political worldview educated new members and immediately reinforced the process of their integration into a cadre organization. During the late 1960s, the question of whether to build a vanguard party or the movement was a major topic of debate in the New Left. Most understood these to be at odds with one another. The Young Lords attempted to do both. They devised and implemented broad reform campaigns and simultaneously attempted to build a cadre organization. In the latter, members shared a revolutionary perspective, which they sought to amplify in theory and practice among the poor and working class in their community.
I believe that's the end of the section we're reading today. Yep. Okay. Thank you,
Right
Comrade.
on.
You did a beautiful job.
Yes,
Thank you.
did.
You sure
You did an
did.
awesome job, Comrade Jesse. And this chapter was awesome, man. I love this.
I love the way that it dives into, everything from not just organizing idealistically, but also the way they represented themselves and, went for the militant gear to be able to show we are literally at war right now with a fucking
Yep.
illegitimate colonizer government. And that still holds true to this day, And I'm curious, Comrade Subi, what are your thoughts on this chapter?
Oh, yeah.
My bad, sorry, I was talking to my wife. What was the question?
I was asking what your thoughts on this chapter are.
Oh man, you got me in and out. Cause I'm gonna be honest, I was half paying attention and half wasn't. Cause I'm putting in some orders right now. Put me on the spot. Thank you, appreciate that.
Sorry.
Yeah, you definitely did. You definitely put me on the spot.
It's about the 13 points and all that kind of stuff. We still stand by all that kind of stuff. We've modernized it and we honestly still wear the same kind of garb that they're talking about and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Inspired by oh, sorry.
No, I said thank you, Alyssa.
Oh, I was gonna say I didn't know. Well, I mean, I guess it was a bit obvious, but I didn't know that the berets and the clothing that the Young Lords wore were inspired by the clothing worn by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. Didn't know that. But that's cool as fuck.
Oh, you know what is very interesting too. There's a lot of correlation there as well. A lot of what people don't know, because a lot of history of the Young Lords is only told from New York side, which is pretty dope. But that's because New York really mastered the art of the media. But there's also a lot of things I learned about Chicago. Like I learned a lot of Chicago members went down to Cuba to be able to cut sugarcane to contribute to the economy with the Corte de los 10 Millones that they had. And I know David Rivera was actually one of the individuals who went down there at the time. And that's how much they was inspired by the Cuban Revolution, that they actually went down there also to participate and help them out with their revolution. So I just wanted to add that.
That's base as fuck. That's awesome. Holy shit.
and one other fun fact is that their colors that they chose is based on the West Side Story, the purple that they chose.
All right. Yeah.
I was gonna ask. I love that. Purple's my favorite color.
It was based on I remember it. And in fact, to start off, that color purple, it started off first when the Young Lords were first a gang, and then it transformed to their revolutionary clothing with their berets being purple, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, what they wore in Chicago before they I guess revolutionized was more like the
jackets.
Yeah, the jackets, more like the Lettermans, with their own crest on it, with their own symbols and stuff. That was kind of like the style in Chicago at the time, with a lot of, I don't like calling them gangs because I don't really think they were gangs at that time, but I guess street movements, social clubs. But that was kind of the look at the time.
Right on. And right there towards the end, I really love how they keep on like they've been emphasizing this throughout the entire chapter, but you need both theory and praxis. You can't have one you can't have one without the other, you know. The vanguard party is the movement. They're one of the same. A communist movement is comprised of not just one but multiple revolutions, and those revolutions are fought for, are won by the people, by the masses, by the vanguard party. The vanguard party is what pushes the movement forward. It's the people. So yeah, I really like I really like how they keep on emphasizing it, that you can't have they can't have practice without theory. You can't have theory without praxis. I use this analogy. Praxis is the knife, while theory is the whetstone. The whetstone is what sharpens the knife, and then when the knife is sharpened, you use it. But then when the blade gets dull, you resharpen it. You readjust how you apply that whetstone to the knife. You readjust how you apply theory through praxis, and then you change that theory based on that praxis. So yeah.
Indeed. Yes, Shay, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, well, I want to comment on one of the demands, which was, I think it was the 10th, where it talked about revolutionary machismo.
Yeah.
Yeah, revolutionary machismo. There's no such thing as revolutionary machismo. And what happened was with that was that the sisters in the party, started getting together and form a caucus, man, so that they could eventually, change a lot of that particular demand, because first of all, you got to understand that the party at one time was predominantly male. The females were following and the men were leading. And that came to a close when sisters started getting involved, and then all of a sudden, even the Central Committee had to change as a result of the struggles that the sisters inside the party were having. So I just wanted to make comment on that.
Right on.
Because while in prison in Attica, one of the things, we were able to get access to 10-point program. The 10-point program, we already had it, but the 13-point program, we had a little struggle to get it, underground coming in. Lawyers used to be bringing it into us, and that was our lessons. We used to take the 13-point program, and I personally, me and two other brothers, in Attica, we were using it to teach the comrades, man. And as a result of that, man, we grew. The party grew tremendously. That's why they had to touch my ass out of it. But anyway, I went to Green Haven. We did the same thing over there, so there's no difference, man. But, as they say, pa'lante siempre.
Right on. Because I read that and I'm like, there's no such thing as revolutionary machismo. That's like saying there's revolutionary racism. Like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, right on, Shay, right on.
There's also the perspective of the era in which this happened, and
Exactly.
in the 60s and the 70s was a massive time for women's rights, making exponential growth. And this is one of those things where, of course, it's going to come into play in the revolutionary movements too, and not just like at the ballot box, things like that. That liberation for all means liberation for all, regardless of race, gender, any of those things. So that absolutely was necessary to be brought to the table and bring in women leadership, the whole fucking 9 yards.
Exactly. Because I've said this countless times. Ooh, I see Alyssa has her hand up. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just forget. So we actually, I think it was back in May, we got to go listen to Iris Morales talk. And she was one of the women who actually made, well, she's, I don't know, Subi, how many books has she written? More than one.
Yeah, it's
But
about two, I believe. I think she has two.
okay. But she, so she talked about, kind of pointing things out. There was certain like meetings that like women weren't allowed to go to or whatever. And she was like, so she used, that sign that you always see, that I'm not going to use the terms that are on it, but it says no N-words, no Puerto Ricans, no something, no dogs. And so then she would add no women to it, I guess. And so that kind of made the point of what, and then they started kind of opening their eyes a little bit, or whatever. So that was really cool. And then I also just wanted to point out, because Ian and Subi usually do, and I don't usually, because usually anybody that I talk to feels like already knows it, but the Connecticut chapter is actually like comprised of what, 80%, 85% women.
Yeah. If you
Most,
exclude me and Ian, it's only two other guys.
yeah. So we're definitely a chapter. We're definitely have some female powerful energy going on over here. Some feminine energy.
Hell yeah. That's what the fuck's up. Sister Gabby, I see you got your hand up.
Right on. And oh, sorry. Comrade Subby, you were gonna say something?
My bad. I'm so used to TikTok. I just jumped in. Get ahead. My bad. I apologize.
No, it's fine, Comrade. I used to be addicted to TikTok once. But no, yeah, what you were saying, sisters, and what Comrade Alyssa just said, we need to combat all the contradictions of capitalism. We need to combat racism. We need to combat misogyny. We need to combat ableism. We need to combat queerphobia. We need to combat all of these contradictions. In order to combat these contradictions, we have to include the people that are oppressed by these contradictions. You can't have you can't say you are against all types of oppression if your group is only made up of men and they claim that they're going to lead the oppression against misogyny. Like, that doesn't work. That's like an all group of neurotypical people saying they're going to combat ableism. Like, how the fuck is that going to work?
Fair point, Connor. Goodness.
Like, can you imagine that shit?
Right? It's like, oh, wait a fucking minute here. We need a little balance.
Yeah, exactly. We need a little balance right here.
Right. Chairman Subi, go ahead. You got the mic.
I just wanted to add, I'm looking for the freaking article now, but I know in November 1970 they did change it to "We want equality for women and down with machismo and male chauvinists."
Exactly.
I just want. I can't find the description, so I can read it down. So just give me a few. I'll see if I find it.
Right. Please and thank you. I appreciate that.
He's got so many books. He's literally going through a binder. Like, you remember those 3-prong binders, the thickest one that you possibly have? He's digging through like 4 of them right now to find this one thing for you. I promise.
Yeah, we didn't have to call him out like that. You have to call him out like that.
No, every time we go there, every time I go there, there's just like, he's like, I have these things. So he's just like showing me all these archives, and it's incredible. He has everything. It's incredible. Everything that's ever been done. Everything Young Lord that's ever been done. This man owns it.
That's a level of organization of like, here, let me find that file that I can genuinely fucking appreciate. That's awesome.
That's beautiful.
Low-key nerd. Don't let many people know. Like, I really like hitting the books. Listen, I do believe you can't have a revolution without education. I do not believe that armed liberation is the only means of liberation. If you go into history, look at Simon Boulevard. You know, you can have all the war tactics and great military armies, but if you don't have the right people in the right position with the right knowledge and education, it's all going to collapse under you. So I really feel like, you know, digging into the crates and really, you know, studying history and understanding why we are in the situation that we are is like the most important thing of a revolution. Because if not, you're just fighting the fight.
Damn right.
Right on.
That's one of the things, and this is definitely not verbatim because I have Swiss cheese memory, but I believe it was Kwame Ture said basically praxis without theory is blind, theory without praxis is impotent, it's empty, you know.
Yep.
You gotta have both. You really genuinely do.
Because theory without praxis is just willful inaction. You know, but praxis without theory is just unorganized anger. That's all it is. You know, it's just people randomly attacking without any sense of direction or purpose. You know, you can't have liberation without having discipline. You know, you need discipline, and you need discipline in order to have liberation.
Well, you have to have some working knowledge bases too in order to actually be able to seize that power for the masses.
Yep.
Because otherwise, what the fuck are you doing? If you don't know how to go about that, you're going to end up looking like one of these fucking clowns from January 6th who had honestly the right idea, but the wrong motivation and not enough knowledge of what to do once they were in there. They had the opportunity to form a new government. Thank goodness they didn't, because it would probably be fascist as fuck. But they had the opportunity to actually go in there and form a new government, and they didn't fucking know how. They were sniffing shoes and stealing podiums instead.
Wiping shit on the walls.
Yo, I don't know if y'all remember that, and I see Comrade Subi, but the funniest part stuff. The funniest thing about that is that instead of forming their own governments, they literally made a fucking noose. They literally made like a noose stand. Like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what crack they were on, but like Jesus Christ, sorry.
Go ahead, Comrade Subi.
All right, I don't got my glasses, so bear with me, because as you can see, this is very small literature. Okay. Says we want equality for women, down with machismo and male chauvinists. It says under capitalism, women has been oppressed both societally, and our men have the turn of machismo must be used by men to take out their frustration on wives, sisters, mothers, children. Men must fight along with sisters in the struggle for economical and social equality, and must recognize that sisters make up over half of the revolutionary army. Sisters and brothers are equally fighting for our people. Forward, sisters, in the struggle. So I just Alyssa wasn't
right
lying.
on.
Like, I have almost every issue of Palante printed out.
Yo, I am. My ADHD will never allow me to be that organized.
It wasn't that difficult for me. NYU did most of the work for me. So if you go to, if anyone can go to NYU-Palante, and they have all the digital archive. They used to allow you to download the archive onto your computer and you can have it. But I guess somebody started, well, I know people started taking the imagery and making clothings from it. So now you can't download the archive, but you can print it, right? So you can, it does allow you to print directly from the website. And again, it's exactly how it was then. Is, you know, you have color imagery, and you'll be surprised how clear these articles are. And it's phenomenal. You know, I really like the fact that, you know, even each person that was contributing to the paper, you know, they took the time to write their own series on certain histories. Like Yoruba did a lot of things on the history of Cuba. He had like 8, 9 different, you know, chapters of his writings of the history of Cuba. If I'm not mistaken, Juan Gonzalez did the same thing for Puerto Rico, which was Borinquen. He gave the history, you know, from Borinquen all the way, you know, to the articles, you know, to where they was at. So it was very interesting how they use this as an outlet, not just for up-to-date news, what was going on at the moment, but also using the imagery, you know, and the arts to draw people in and teach them something that happened in the past. 'Cause like I said, understanding what happened then shows us what's going on now. And they really understood that. So by mixing up the newspaper with history and current events, again, it's important because now you don't have people kind of thrown off. You can give them historical context plus to what's going on now and show people how it correlates and how it all intertwines.
Absolutely. That's so fucking important too, because we have to learn from our history. We have to be able to see what it is that our predecessors did right that we can learn from, grab hold of, and bring into modern context, as well as being able to see any errors that were made that we can learn from and go, okay, we can't repeat that. Let's try a different route for solving that problem. See if we can find a better solution for it. It's so fucking important. And that's something that we are also keeping in mind in the Right On newsletter, the Panther newsletter that we just relaunched, of combining both historical pieces and some current stuff too. So that way everybody can see the whole picture and really be able to bring that together and go, okay, I can see what's happened. I can see what's happening. Let's envision where we'd like to see ourselves go, what we'd like to actually see happen, and fucking build towards that. And Comrade Gabby, I see you've got your hand up. Go ahead, sis.
Right on, right on. And no, yeah, what you were saying and what Comrade Subby were saying 100%, because you have to understand how things got to this point in order to understand how to move forward. You have to understand, in order to understand the materialistic conditions and apply a dialectical analysis on things, you have to understand how we got here, why things are the way they are, how the internal contradictions within our society are interconnected, how they influence our materialistic conditions, our materialistic needs, our class struggle, our thoughts. And once you understand why things are the way they are, once you see how everything is interconnected, once you understand how all these oppressions are linked and go back to one thing, profit, then you understand what path you go forward. Then you understand how you move forward. Then you can apply that theory. Then you can apply the principles of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, and Pantherism to your materialistic conditions, and through that praxis, you better your theory and how you improve upon it, how you adapt it, and how you expand upon it. You know, because a lot of quote unquote Marxist Leninists who are actually just fucking rad libs need to fucking understand that Marxism is not just Marx and Engels. It's not just two fucking people. It's everyone. It's all the revolutionaries and all the communist movements who added on to the science and who expanded upon it. Just like how Lenin expanded upon Marxism, just like how Mao did, just like how we're doing it right now. How we're bringing it to a modern context. We can't just base our theory and our praxis based on Marxist time or on Lenin's time, because they are two completely different materialistic conditions. They have their own materialistic conditions. The whole point of socialism is to apply the principles of Marxism to our own unique materialistic conditions and establish a dictatorship of the proletarians. And the way we radicalize people, the way we are able to educate people, is first and foremost to provide for their fucking needs, to show them why socialism is for them, to show them how it benefits them. And once they see that, once they see how things can be better, once they see how things haven't always been this way, and once they start applying and through mass line cultural revolution, grassroots movements, then they'll start applying the ideological and political line of the party. Then they themselves will apply a Marxist dialectical and scientific analysis on themselves, the internal contradictions within their communities, how they relate to one another, and then they will adapt that theory to praxis to engage in radicalizing, to engage in organizing, to engage in educating, elevating, and moving forward. Because the whole point of this is to elevate the masses and meet them where they're at, until they're as knowledgeable or even more knowledgeable than us. That's the whole point, you know? And yeah.
Yep. Exactly. That's where it starts, is meeting them where they're at, showing them how the ideology here behind the movement and how the science of dialectical materialism actually applies to their life and their circumstances, and light that fire under their ass to get past the Red Scare propaganda that told them, oh, socialism is a scary word. You know, brings my thoughts right back to Chairman Fred of socialism is the people. If you're scared of socialism, you're fucking scared of yourself. Comrade Subi, I see you got your hand up again. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, one of my favorite individuals to study and listen to material is Stokely Carmichael. And he broke down, I was listening to him, he was talking at a university. I can't tell you which university because he spoke at so many. And he was talking about socialism. And he was talking about how he was having a conversation with an individual and they were like, socialism is dead. And he was making a joke. He was like, yeah, I didn't get the memo. But he's like, how could socialism be dead? And he's like, you can't see how socialism is not surviving. And he's going based off of individuals, individuals practicing socialism, right? So you're judging socialism or even communism based off of individuals that are practicing. And he told them, he was like, socialism, it can't be dead. It's actually thriving. He said, how could you judge socialism by individuals? Do you judge Christianity by individuals, or do you judge it based off its principles and morals and what he stands on? And that, for me, that triggers so many different things, because I don't knock religion, but to understand that we understand that religious wars, more people died in religious wars than in any other war, right? And we also know atrocities that happen with religion, and people practice, and we don't knock those, but their belief system is not based off of the actions of individuals. It's based off whatever the teachings is based on. And people need to give the same, I guess, grace that they would give religion and actually give it to like things like socialism, instead of taking the imagery of what I guess the media and the propaganda paints and really understanding and taking it is for what it actually is. So I just wanted to.
I like that example you used there, because there's nothing wrong with the things that Jesus was teaching. He was saying, feed people, clothe people, heal people, beat the shit out of bankers. Now, what exactly? Now, what some people have twisted that into with like the fundamentalist dogmatic bullshit that's oppressive as hell, that's a fucking world away from that. And it's nothing but oppression. And it's like, okay, are you going to say judge people who are actually Christ-like according to what fucking Westboro Baptist Church does? Fuck no, you're not. Most of them would be insulted by it too. Go ahead, Comrade Shay. I saw you throw your hand up there.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Brother Sobey was saying, because I saw that too. But it seems like, what happens is with that is that people look at Russia, and say that as a result of Russia, socialism can't work, and as a result of other countries as well, so it's a misunderstanding, in reference to what socialism is all about, but I definitely go with what Sobi was saying, that Carmichael, because I watched that too, and I keep watching it because it has so much to got so much to learn, where he talks about, if you're gonna look at a Christian, how you judge a Christian by his, you judge him by his principles. You don't judge him by his religion, and it's the same thing that Brother Sobey was Comrade Sobey. So.
Yep, well said, and massively agreed. I've got friends who are socialists because of what they learned from being Christians. And they were like, well, wait a minute, this is actually the example I'm supposed to be following. Maybe I should be a commie. And so they are, And I'm like, all right, you followed the path correctly. Comrade Sean, I see you got your hand up. Go for it.
Okay, so piggybacking on the whole religious doctrines, rejecting the teachings. Recently, I've read an article a couple articles about how evangelical leaders are actually condemning the radicalized Christian nationalism in the fact that, like, they'll sit there in church and do, I forget exactly which passage it is. It's not my book. I don't pay attention. Whew, hang on. Oh, son of a bitch. Sorry. Basically, like, anytime they go to read Jesus's teachings, oh, son of a bitch. A lot of their congregants will come up after and be like, "Oh, that's weak. I don't follow that anymore," and blah blah blah. And it's really, you guys were raised in the church. Jesus is supposed to be like your Messiah, and you hang on, more sneezes. Oh,
Bless you,
jeez.
ironically. May Jesus, may
You know,
Jesus
like,
sorry.
Here,
I'm
comrade.
allergic to those teachings.
Here, Jesus. May Jesus and his socialist spirit guide you.
Oh yeah, no.
Oh,
It's
goodness.
just really weird because, you know, like, they spend their whole lives raised in these churches, and now because of political leanings, they no longer respect their own traditions. At this point, I'm just questioning why the fuck they're even there. Passing
can't
off the
answer
baton.
But it's a good question. But I mean, that's cool, and I'm surprised that evangelicals are calling that out. But glad to see it. That's definitely a change that needs to happen, because I mean, ever since like the 50s or 60s, I think it was, some of the most hardcore of the evangelicals have been the ones who formed that coalition called the Family. If you've heard of Focus on the Family, the very Christo-fascist media conglomerate, where they're pushing a lot of these really bigoted ideologies and stuff. So I'm glad to see that even within their own, they're being called out for that. Of like, hey, maybe you should stop
I
not
think
being so hard.
Well, yeah, it's mostly the faith leaders calling it out. It's the congregants themselves that are actually following fascist ideologies. And as a sidebar, I do have one of those Focus on the Family places right here in Colorado Springs.
I'm sorry.
Burns me every time I drive it by.
Burn it down.
Impulse,
Not on
but
air,
like,
Gabby.
Sorry.
that's my impulse, but like, I gotta behave myself.
You can't let the intrusive thoughts out.
Not on air anyway. But Comrade Gabby, I see you got your hand up. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was gonna piggyback off of what were you guys saying about Christianity, because I've said this before and I say it again. Jesus was a proto-socialist. He was a proto-fucking socialist. Like literally, if you look at because I've had conversations with Comrade Felix, and I believe you know Comrade Felix, Sister Zen. But Comrade Felix and I have had some really good conversations about this, and he said, and I wholeheartedly agree, that that dialectics was based on consumption rather than production. Because if you look at Jesus and if you look at what he talks about, whenever he talks to his followers, he always talks about abundance. He always talks about them how there will be enough to go around. He always talks about them how the earth is plentiful, and whenever they worry about there no longer being enough, that the earth has everything to give them. Jesus's analysis was one based on consumption rather than one based on production, like Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. That's why a lot of early Christian groups didn't really develop and never really took over, because they didn't have the correct theory. They didn't really have the correct analysis to really to really expand that revolutionary view on like Marx and Engels, and I always tell people this, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. Just like the gun and just like the state, religion is not inherently reactionary. It is not inherently reactionary. Christianity as a religion is not a problem. Christianity as an institution is the problem. It's the co-opting of Christianity and transforming it into some whitewashed, white supremacist, fascist bullshit. That's the problem. Because Christianity in the U.S. does have a revolutionary history, especially in the civil rights era and in the black liberation era. It does, like, Christianity does genuinely have a revolutionary history in the U.S., but you're never taught that. You're never taught that, like, ever.
Well, hell, we don't even learn about people like John Brown in school. I didn't learn about him till I was a fucking adult. And he said flat out that part of what drove him to go around killing slavers in order to free the slaves was because that's what he thought Jesus would do. And it's like,
Fuck yeah.
All right, carry on.
Right on, dude. All about.
And to rewind a little bit to what you were saying about what Jesus had to say, relating more to like the abundance there. That's consumption instead of production. That's part of the basis behind that story of him making a homemade whip, flipping the tables, and beating the shit out of bankers on the steps of the temple. Because he was like, wait a fucking minute, amidst all of this abundance, we have people going hungry while you are sitting here, A, hoarding resources, and B, trying to hoard even more by coercing people at the temple doors to fucking pay you. Fuck you. Get out of here. You're exploiting the church. Leave, Yep. So it's a matter of perspective that also needs to be seen more broadly today, that we do not have a lack of resources. We have resources being hoarded and resources being wasted. We have more empty houses than we do unhoused people. We have more food being fucking thrown away every year than what it would take to feed the hungry. Get the fuck out of here with this fucking false sense of, disparity and lack, when that's not the case. It's not lacking. It's being fucking thrown away in order to pursue profit in the form of tax rebates for waste, when it should be, this food is given to the community. Oh, it didn't sell in like the first 5 days of the week it was on the shelf. All right, every weekend do a giveaway. Chairman Subi, I see you got your hand up too.
Yeah, really quick. I just wanted to give an example on socialism really quick, if you guys don't mind. I know I'll get back a little bit, but I don't know if you guys know, but Puerto Rico, it recruits more military personnel than any state in the United States into the United States military. And the US military, it defends itself against communism, socialism, while representing capitalism. But at the same token, their biggest recruitment tool is socialism. It's the housing, the healthcare, the education that they offer, these people. And the reason why Puerto Rico is like a hub for military recruit is because they know they can prey on the conditions that they're living in and the rest that they're going through. And I again, this is an argument that I have with a lot of Boricuas from the island, because my issue is where sometimes there's a disconnect because we are raised in two different places, right? I was born and raised here, they were born and raised there. And a lot of Boricuas refuse to understand that we're a continuation of the struggle of what's going on over there, because that's the reason we come over here, is because of all of that. So when you have an opportunity, when you take an opportunity like join the military and you are given these tools to succeed in society, for right or for wrong, right? And then you tell me that was born here that I have every opportunity that, this country can offer by being here. And it's like, no, it's not. In reality, the belly of the beast and being raised here and going through, the systematic racism and, the educational system that's set up for failure here. I'm a product of No Child Left Behind. So if anybody know what that is and what we went through, it was really, really a bad setup for us. We was not set up for success. We were set up for failure. We were set up just to get by. And understanding that and trying to even educate and show people how the United States uses the propaganda against socialism and communism while being able to use socialist tactics to be able to, you know, use it against the people. And like I said, it's not just the physical warfare. We have to also understand the psychological warfare, because the United States says a lot about a lot of shit, but also goes behind the door and does a lot of what they were preaching against, you know. And that's we have to pay attention to the propaganda in the media. The floor is yours. You got it. Listen, if I'm talking too much, guys, listen, y'all can tell me to shh.
No, go
No,
ahead.
it's okay, comrade. Preach,
Keep
preach.
giving it up. Keep giving it
Keep
up.
going.
Keep going.
Right. You are speaking
going.
wisdom, Chairman,
Keep
and we're here
going.
for it.
Keep going.
If you don't
Comrade
keep going, I'm
Comrade
gonna give it.
Yo,
If you're
no, but
wrapping
like,
that thought up there, then yeah, Shay, you've got the floor now because I see you
Oh,
raising your hand. So dive in, bro. What's up? Let
go,
us hear your
Jay, go.
thoughts.
Well, we need to understand that Puerto Rican people, since 1898, have been indoctrinated to a philosophy that is strange to them. First of all, they've been the whole culture of the Puerto Rican people have been changed tremendously, psychologically and physically. You know, so I'm in Santo Domingo right now, Dominican Republic, and I have wars going on with some people here because they claim that I'm an American, that I'm not Puerto Rican, that I was born in the United States. Okay, so what? I was born in the United States. But they don't, what they fail to realize is this rapper, what's his name? Santos? Santos, he's a rapper. And he was born in the United States, but he says also that in spite of the fact that he's born in the United States, he's considered himself a Dominican. And nobody, nowhere is ever going to make things change for him. He's going to be always a Dominican. His instincts, his morale, everything is Dominican. So I say the same thing. I say the same thing. But see, our people, man, our people have been so miseducated for so long that it's hard. It's really hard to change them. It's going to take drastic changes, drastic moves, revolutionary, to change that. Don Pedro Albizu Campos was one of our greatest leaders, and they killed him because they knew that eventually he was going to bring about changes in Puerto Rico. So they had to kill him. They killed Lolita Lebron as well, even though they say she died, but to me, they killed her, you know, and they kill everybody who stands up for liberation. I don't even know if there's an socialist party in Puerto Rico right now. Is there, Sobi, Brother Sobi?
I won't be surprised.
A socialist party?
They
So,
have,
you know, they used to be a socialist party.
they have one. The problem is that the population of the island keeps decreasing. So a lot of the people, individuals, you know, who want, you know, freedom, independence, they were forced to leave. You know, so the little bit that you do have, there are a lot of, like what Cher said, people who've been manipulated. And again, the system in Puerto Rico is built for Puerto Ricans to depend on.
Exactly.
You know, to be sustained. And a lot of the fear in Puerto Rico, especially for the seniors and people who, you know, haven't been able to get out of their situation, is losing their benefits. That's what a lot of us have to understand. The reason why there is a big push for statehood is because a lot of those individuals are afraid to start over because of the corruption in Puerto Rico. But if we understand everything that happens in Puerto Rico is permitted by the United States, you know, And again, I just say facts for what it is. You know, Obama probably did one of the worst things by signing the promesa, you know, in Puerto Rico, because we could talk about corruption all day in Puerto Rico. But who signed? The United States has a agent who has to look over and sign over for every penny that Puerto Rico can spend. So if you're saying funds are being mismanaged and misspent, who can you really blame? You have to look at the U.S. government for allowing those funds to even be, you know, mismanaged from the beginning. And if you don't think that the U.S. federal government doesn't know where every penny of its dollars actually go, you're mistaken. The system is built for it to be corrupt there for a specific reason, for the people to be afraid to not have the United States there to save them.
See, the thing is that Puerto Rico can never, ever be a state. On various reasons, it can never be a state. Even if they attempted to make it a state, it can't survive as a state because it's one of the poorest countries in the world.
People got to get. United States would never permit Puerto Rico to become a state because, again, then you're gonna be able to grant it all the benefits that every other state has, meaning that it'll be allowed to file for bankruptcy. If you allow Puerto Rico to file for bankruptcy and have all that debt forgiven, what do you think is going to happen to the economy? And what do you think every other state that's in debt? Because every state has a debt. Every state. Yeah. So if every state could they be able to file bankruptcy the way Puerto Rico would be, they would want to do the same because they get the double tax incentives.
Yeah.
They won't allow.
That's something that's not going to ever happen. And we as revolutionaries are not going to allow that to happen anyway either. Right on.
Right on.
It doesn't need to become a state. It needs to become independent.
Independent,
and self-governing.
Exactly.
Let me make a point on what Sister Gabby said before. She was talking about what is that? The mortgage. You was talking about mortgage. Do you know that in Dominican Republic, all you do is buy the land, buy a plot of land, and build your own house?
Really?
And that plot of land is yours.
No taxes? No property taxes to pay every year?
Well, you pay whatever you got to pay, but after you pay whatever you got to pay, you ain't got to pay no more. It's not like the United States, you'd be paying for the rest of your life.
Right. It's how it should be, of just like, okay, if there's going to be sales tax on buying property in a home, then all right, fuck it, take the sales tax. But to have the ownership of your property held over your head indefinitely for fucking property taxes to be paid every summer and every winter is fucked. Absolutely fucked. It's unethical.
I pay property on my car here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
I have to pay property tax.
That's basically what your license plate fee is to get the new sticker every fucking year. It's paying property tax again on a car you already fucking paid for, or are still paying for. It is bullshit. In the words of George Carlin, it's all bullshit. It's fucking bad for you.
In the words of a wise revolutionary, fuck them kids.
Well, go ahead, Gabby. I see you've got your hand up and had some more thoughts to add to that too. Go ahead, sis.
Oh no, yeah. I just wanted to add on what Comrade Shay was saying. And Comrade Shay, I've told you this before, I believe, but in case you're unaware, Comrade Sui, I'm Cuban. I'm from Cuba, and man, I was born there. Like I was born in Cuba. I was born in Matanza, Colón, right? But my parents took me from my country, and they took me to the United States when I was just 1 year. When I was just one. And ever since then, I lived in the United States all my life. And even though I was born in Cuba, even though I was born there, I have people telling me, you're not Cuban, you're American. I have people telling me, you're not from Cuba, you're pretty much you're quote unquote Miamian. Fuck that word. It's ew, Miamian. The fuck is that? but exactly what Shay was saying. But exactly what Shay was saying. Even if yeah, sure. Even if I've lived in the United States for most of my life for most of my life, I'm a Cuban. That's never going to change. I identify more with me being a Cuban than me being an American. You know, I identify more with my Cuban roots than I do identifying with quote unquote American culture. And and that's never going to change, you know. And with what you guys were talking about, we're talking about we're talking about about Puerto Rico. The United States benefits on Puerto Rico being poor. It will never become a state because it's a neo-colony. It's a neo-colony of the of the United States. They everything in Puerto Rico from social relations to economic relations to culture is all co-opted and used for the benefit of white supremacy and for Yankee imperialism. That's it. You know, if it becomes if if they allow Puerto Rico to become a state, if they annex Puerto Rico, then Puerto Rico gets some of the benefits that all these other states have, you know, and they'll never allow that. They need Puerto Rico to be impoverished. They need Puerto Rico to be economically, socially, and culturally controlled, manipulated, and co-opted in order to maximize profit. You know, because all neocolonialism is the illusion of freedom. It's the illusion that you have a democracy and you have freedom when in actuality the imperialists force you to point the gun towards your own head. You know, it's through food, aid, and imperial loans and the creation of a comprador class to trick the masses and confuse them that they have freedom. You know, and and yeah, so right on, y'all.
You know, for the United, if they were to allow, again, just concluding this, if they were to allow Puerto Rico to become a state, they got to keep in mind that they will be violating their own laws. One of them is the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine will not allow no independent within the circumference of the United, within the Western waters. Not allow that. That's why they're so hard on Cuba right now, because it's close to the west. You know, Monroe Doctrine, that Castro went against that, totally against Monroe Doctrine. You know, so they're not going to allow Puerto Rico to become a state based on Monroe Doctrine.
And sorry, I was gonna add, and what you were saying, Sister Zen, Puerto Rico doesn't need American aid. They need liberation. You know, they need self-determination. The Latin America, Africa, Asia, they don't need they don't need these imperialist countries fucking coming to them and promising them imperial aids and making them neo-colonies. They need liberation, have self-determination over their own destiny. And that's all I was gonna say. Sorry for interrupting. That's all I was gonna say.
It's absolutely fucking correct. And you hit the nail on the head a moment ago with the neocolonialism factor, because I mean, every facet of what both you and Comrade Shea have been describing here comes down to these motherfuckers need to decolonize their minds, whether it be the commentary about, oh, well, you're not this, you're American, you're not that, you're American. Fuck that. That's colonizer fucking ideology of that forced amalgamation of like you are now melting pot, therefore you know you're just an American now, and it's erasure of cultural identity and ethnicity. It's erasure of your own history, and it's all fucked. Chairman Subi, I see you've got your hand up too. Go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna have to leave after this, but I really wanted to throw two inserts. Well, really quick. Just even going back to like that whole thing that being born here, you're not, you know, either Cuban enough or Puerto Rican enough or wherever you're from, right? I have this argument with a lot of individuals. Going back to what I said earlier, we have to understand that the reason we came here is because we're a continuation struggle of whatever happened in our homeland. And that's first and foremost. We have to understand that because that's causing more division than anything. So that being said, I do want to recommend a book on Cuba. It's called American History Cuba. for me, I wish they had a book like that on every country, because it talks about Cuba from Columbus all the way to the death of Fidel, and it really breaks down in depth the full history of Cuba, and it's an amazing read. I actually have an Audible book, so if anybody wants to check
Okay,
that
send it to
out.
me. Okay, send it to me, Comrade CB. I would absolutely love. Oh no, he left.
Well, let's see if he manages to pop back in.
I hope he's okay. I was like, damn, I want that book. That'll be an amazing book for me to have.
What's the name of it?
Shit, I forgot. It was like, fuck my ADHD. Ugh.
American History of Cuba.
Yeah, American History of Cuba, I believe. I'm gonna. Oh, by the way, I have a question. I'm probably wrong about this, but Comrade Subi, is he Afro Tahino on TikTok? Is that him or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah.
Oh, that's him. Oh, okay. I want to make sure because I was like, huh, he looks familiar.
Yep, you've been following him for a while.
Yep. I just want to make sure. I would absolutely love to talk to Comrade Subi about Tahino history. You know, I would absolutely love to talk to him about that. But I hope he's back. But this conversation was awesome. Yes, Comrade Joe.
Yeah, I was glad that Comrade Subi had joined in today. I've been inviting him already for like 4 or 5 weeks, and putting it out to all the Young Lord pages on my Facebook also. So I was real happy about that. We had a sister, Mina or Mena, should I pronounce her name correctly? Which is a brown beret, also out of Colorado. And I wanted to introduce her earlier before, but she had mentioned to me prior that she wasn't going to be able to stay too long. But possibly next time she can introduce herself so you all know who she is. And I don't know. One of the things that stood out on the book is like, fuck the pigs and let us all defund their little asses. And I don't know if Sister Yesenia, Comrade Sister Yesenia has anything to say, or Comrade Sean has anything to say. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
What am I supposed to say now? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. My fault.
Hey, fuck the pig. Hey, fuck the pig.
Oh,
any comments? Because it's both your guys' second time joining in, and like anything you gathered, or any comments. And if you don't have any, not to put you on the spot, that's fine.
honestly, I am really appreciating being able to learn, the theory side of things. Because, as you guys said before, like theory without praxis and praxis without theory, it's just a lot of hoo-ha and nonsense. Both need to go hand in hand. So I do appreciate this. Thank you all for chiming in, reading, and doing all that you do.
Right, all power.
All power to the people. Yo, man. And just as a quick reminder to y'all, make sure to have your daily dose and your daily breakfast of pig. It's very good for you, very nutritious, has a lot of protein.
Oh my god.
Yo, I could oh my god, I could easily make a fucking joke because to go off tangents, pig is considered a delicacy in Cuba. So I can imagine like an anti-pig Cuban poster. I'll have your daily dose of pig, and it's fucking and it's a poster of just everyone eating a pig in a cop costume. I would fucking love that shit.
It's a long pig barbecue.
Oh hell yeah! Have your daily dose of bourgeois. They have a lot of nutrients. Eat the rich.
Every time my friend family has actually tried to like barbecue a pig in the ground, it has come up half fucking cooked. I'm okay with actually cooking a butchered pig, not whole pig like that. I know you meant.
It takes a really long time to actually cook all the way through all
Yeah, it
that
does.
fucking meat when
Yep.
you're roasting a whole pig. You gotta
Yeah.
slow smoke that shit.
Yeah. You guys want to know?
Well, that's the thing. They started it at like 4 p.m. and then would try to pull it out between 10 and 1 a.m. I'm like,
Damn.
that pig is not cooked.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I
Nope,
know.
you gotta
Pig
start
is
that shit the
not
day
cooked.
before. Not cooked
you
at
wanna know a
all
fun
and
fact?
rotisserie it.
I think it takes 12 to 14 hours depending on the size of the pig.
Yeah.
You want to know a fun fact? You want to know a fun fact? I'm pretty sure about this, although take it with a grain of salt.
Ow.
But y'all have seen those movies and those shows where they put an apple in the pig's mouth. You want to know why they do that? If I remember
Sure.
correctly, the reason why they put an apple in the pig's mouth is to keep the steam inside the pig, so that way it cooks. So that way it cooks longer and the steam stays inside of the pig and it doesn't escape through the mouth. Apparently.
Cork in the pig. Okay.
Yep. So, yeah.
Comrade Yessie, I see you've got your hand up.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Just wanted hi. I just wanted to say, yes, I'm loving the studies, the readings, learning about every organization's different point system and how they overlap and build upon each other. So that's very empowering, and I appreciate this community just because I'm learning so much, and sometimes my head just spins because I'm like, whoa, what did I just read? And so I'm loving it. And then one thing though is I don't like comparing the police to pigs because it's an insult to the pigs. Those pigs are very smart and they're clean and they're cute.
You're right. You're right.
But
Pigs
I
are
get
not
it.
cute.
So yeah, that was my comment for that. And also the whole like not being enough, just like growing up in Colorado. I was always in between. Like I wasn't Mexican enough for the Mexicans. I wasn't white enough for the Americans. So I kind of felt out of place. But over the years and with my education and growth and the communities I'm a part of and reclaiming my history, my roots, our traditions and everything, I've realized that I'm Native, I'm Indigenous, and it's something that I struggle to try to get my mom specifically to understand. She is lighter skinned, but she was born in Mexico. The only thing is she denies her indigeneity. She says, no, we're Mexican and you're Chicana. But I'm like, what does that mean? Where do we come from? Like, we've always been here. Of course we're Native. Of course we're Indios. Like, look at our families. And if we trace back our history, like, we didn't come from overseas. They came and they raped us. They took advantage. And that's why I'm Chicana, I'm Mexica, I'm mixed. And it's just frustrating growing up, even in our own communities. It's like, you're not brown enough. You don't speak Spanish, or you're not Mexican enough. You're whitewashed. And then if you do speak Spanish, and you're more involved in your Native traditions or Native communities, it's like, oh, you don't speak Nahuatl, you're not learning your Native tongues. So it's just like, it gets upsetting because it's like everywhere I go, it's like I'm not enough. So I have to stay strong to, who I am, where I come from, continuing to educate myself and empower myself. And, we're all, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all just trying to survive, make it to the next day. And until we can see that, that's when we can make real change, because it's a humanitarian struggle, Well, I'm middle. That's all I had to say.
Indeed, it's another facet of people needing to decolonize their minds, because there's no difference between the Indigenous here who were raped by English and French versus indigenous in Mexico that were raped by the Spanish and the Portuguese. You're still indigenous, and might help to tell your mom. I learned this tidbit from listening to Comrade Rafa. He said that Chicano means the people of the land. And if that doesn't scream the first people of Turtle Island, I don't know what else does. So if she genuinely wants to call herself Chicana, then it is a matter of grabbing hold of her indigenous roots and going, yes, this is who I am. Comrade Gabby, I see you got your hand up.
No, yeah, 100%. Because I've said before, and I'll say again, it doesn't matter who you were colonized by. There needs to be decolonization in the Americas full front, both in the Anglosphere and in the land sphere. It doesn't matter if you were colonized by the English or if you were colonized by the French or by Spain or by Portugal. It doesn't matter who you were colonized by. It doesn't matter. There needs to be decolonization full fucking front throughout all the world, throughout all of the Americas, and the right to self-determination to the colonized, oppressed people, to grab hold of their roots, as you said, and to transform their culture into a revolutionary culture, to use their art, their language, their way of life, their traditions, their beliefs, and so on and so forth, to radicalize, to agitate, and to organize the people. That's what we have to do, And
Right.
yeah, it doesn't matter if you're colonized by the Spaniards or by the English or by whoever the fuck. You're still indigenous. That doesn't erase your indigenous roots. That doesn't erase your culture or your people or your history. Fuck that reactionary white supremacist eugenics bullshit. Fuck it all the way.
That. Yep.
Right on.
It's another facet of the whitewashing in this country, wanting to basically commit cultural erasure of people's roots, of your actual ethnicity, your culture, your ancestry, and be like, oh, well, nah, you're in the melting pot now, so you're just American. Yeah, no, fuck that shit. Fuck that colonizer shit. There is no such thing as an American ethnicity unless we are talking about the indigenous of Turtle Island who have been here since time immemorial.
Yep.
Other than
Literally.
that, everybody else, yet no. It's kind of annoying even when they hyphenate shit of like, oh, well, you're now an African American, or you're a Japanese American, or you're this American, that American. And it's like, no, your ethnicity would be African or Japanese, or in this case, indigenous. American is nothing but a fucking colonizer name anyways.
Yep.
It was literally the name applied from Amerigo Vespucci.
Americo Vespucci.
Yep.
Americo Vespucci. That's where the name comes from, American. But there's no such thing as America. Really, when you look at it, America doesn't exist. That's a title that was a title that was given to a certain atmosphere. And they said America. And then you can't cross certain waters. Certain waters belong to the Americans, certain waters belong to somebody else. That's crazy. That's divide and conquer. So American is to me, America means divide and conquer. Really, when you look at it. Because there's no such thing as an American. Yeah. Now, when you say indigenous people, yes, they are indigenous people. Now they want to call themselves Native Americans. That's on them, and I respect that, but they're indigenous people before being Americans,
Right.
But Puerto Ricans, as quiet as this cat, are indigenous people. Where we come from the Tainos, man.
Right.
So we're indigenous people also. In South America, Latin America, all those people, all those indigenous people.
Yep. It's a matter. It wasn't nobody here calling themselves American. No, it was whatever the name of their tribe was, or, just I'm a Turtle Islander, not this fucking colonizer
American.
name.
Yeah, exactly. What I find so funny about the term American, whenever white people, right? Whenever I see colonizer, people say America as a melting pot, quote unquote. What I find so hilarious? They include all these other cultures and all these other people except for themselves. They never include themselves in that melting pot. They always include everyone else except themselves, which I always find hilarious.
Then they fail to see that, okay, like that refers basically to a stew pot. And I'm sorry, I know when I make stew, I don't like put the shit in a blender and make a fucking amalgamated mush out of it. No, my stew still has the meat, the potatoes, the carrots, all these other things, the carrots, I already said that, the onions, the garlic, the seasonings, all of those things. It's not like, okay, this is just a blob of bleh, of like, it's all one fucking thing now. So they're failing to even see, like, as a melting pot, it still has multiple ingredients, and each of those ingredients is its own thing.
Yep, literally. There is no such thing as one American nation, the same way there is no such thing as one American culture. There is no such thing as one
Right.
singular American culture, but rather multiple cultures in the United States. A lot of those cultures being whitewashed, demonized, dehumanized, and colonized, erased, genocide, and so on and so forth, all to uphold white supremacy. So fuck this concept about there being one singular American culture or American nation. The same thing with the UK. There is no such thing as one singular a nation, but rather multiple nations within the UK, being Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. There is no such thing as one singular. There is no such thing as one singular United Kingdom, but rather different nations, different ethnic groups that are colonized.
Right. Indeed. I see Joe's got his hand up, and then after him, Shay, I saw you throw your hand up, and then we can wrap things up after you get done, because we're at about 2 hours now. Go ahead, Comrade Joe.
I think we're 2.5 hours to be exact. But anyway, that thing about Americo Vespucci has been debunked because he changed his name after the fact to Americo. He had a different name when he came to Turtle Island, and they were trying to find out, okay, well, where did they get it from? But there was some, and I just shared something like recently, like this past week or something on this. It possibly came from an indigenous tribe in South America that was called Americans, or the American tribe. I don't know the exact spelling of it. So that's where they, because they didn't know where it came from, so they're believing one of the first tribes that were colonized was Americans, and that's what I just wanted to share that out there.
Thank you. Didn't know that he stole the name too, on top of,
Yeah.
colonizing. Ooh.
Yeah, you can probably look. Yeah, I mean, you could look it up, or I could probably, if I search my post, I can probably find it and then share it with y'all.
Please do.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Joe. Go ahead, Comrade Shay.
Okay, I want to just throw a monkey wrench in there. Prior to 1700, there was no such thing as white people.
Bingo.
No such thing as white people. White people came about later on in mid 1700s, wasn't it?
It was when the concept of race was first fucking conjured up to justify racism.
Exactly.
white
What?
That's
supremacy,
why
genocide, and so on and so
to
forth.
divide the group, to divide the population, the mass, and also to separate whites from blacks. You know, because there was a lot of unity. A lot of people won't say this, but there was a lot of unity between some whites and blacks, slaves. There was unity, and and so those in power decided to change that, and that's where the whole concept of white people came about. But I just
Right.
wanted to throw that out there for future discussion.
A lot of people don't even realize, that, I mean, we're talking thousands of years of, humans traveling about on the planet and various diasporas. And a lot of people don't fucking grasp that, like, even, much further back in history prior to this ideology coming into play, that there was people of all fucking colors wandered all over Europe. Like, for fuck's sake, if it wasn't for travel routes, or trade routes, that people were bringing, spices and this, that, and the other from the Orient and other goods, to make trade, that because of that, there's all kinds of everybody, every
Yeah.
fucking where. And so, there's thousands of years of these interactions happening, of people living there that are not European descent, but they wanted to find a way to use politics and religion to subjugate people, to justify exploitation, to justify slavery. And I'm using that term justify very fucking loosely and in extremely fucking facetious air quotes, because there is no justifying it. But this was their thought process of like, oh, so if we can deem these people as subhuman, then that's okay for us to treat them like shit, enslave them, exploit them, steal all their fucking resources, right? We can go colonize. And they fucking ran with it. And especially with at that point in time in like the 17th century, the 1600s, of all of Europe being under monarchical rule that all answered to the Roman Empire, basically still via the Roman Catholic Church. And so once the church said, okay, we'll loosen the rules for you to exploit and enslave these people because, of this idea you just created of, anybody with pigments is subhuman compared to those who aren't, then sure, fucking go for it. And it was all trash from the beginning. They basically fucking took Christianity and Catholicism and used that along with politics to try to forever fuck the rest of the world up with it. With this colonization shit. And it's one of those things we absolutely have to fucking put a stop to. It's amazing how people have fucking existed on the face of this planet for countless millennia, and the last few hundred years, stupid fucking ideology like that has caused divisiveness, has caused fucking exploitation, has caused so much fucking turmoil and destruction and genocide to so many people because of a dumb fuck ideology that never should have been embraced in the first fucking place. And all it really came down to is motherfuckers having insecurities and trying to project that shit and pretend as if there's anything that fucking makes them any better than anybody else next to them.
Literally.
Comrade Gabby, I'm not sure if you still have your hand up from a while ago or if you threw it up again. Do you have any thoughts, Dad?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say 100%. The ideology of race was created for one thing and one thing only: profit. To the maximization of profit. To justify it, as you said, in very loose in very loose terms, to quote unquote justify the exploitation, oppression, and subjugation of different ethnic groups, of different people, all on the basis of them not being a part of the fucking quote unquote master race quote unquote, all to uphold the interests of the ruling class, to uphold white supremacy, and to maximize profit through the siphoning of resources and surplus value. That's it. That's the only fucking reason. It all comes back to the fucking profit. If I remember correctly, racism has its roots. Racism has its roots all back to the Roman Empire. If I remember correctly.
Well, I mean, the Roman Empire was even older than that, but the influence that it still had because of the Roman Catholic Church being the head of all the monarchical governments, its influence was still there. And yeah, on the timeline factor there, that's the other part that came into play at the same time as you're seeing, you know, this rise in racist ideology is capitalism.
Yep.
They were being born at the same fucking time. That was a period in time when people who were, you know, the lords and ladies of the land were basically, they were starting to begin a bourgeoisie revolution against the monarchies and tried to fight back against that. And that's part of what contributed to the colonization of Turtle Island, is those motherfuckers going, well, I want to go somewhere where I can be top fucking dog. That bourgeoisie revolution is actually what happened here. The American Revolution, fucking overthrowing British rule, was because they wanted to, you know, take what they had already started to build from becoming capitalist instead of the feudal system. They wanted to step outside of that into mercantilism and make their own fortunes that would put them on the same playing field as the monarchies. And that's the only reason why they threw off monarchical power, was because they wanted to replace it with themselves as the ruling class, being, you know, this wealthy upper crust of business people. And so in order to justify the practices that they had to employ in order to amass that kind of wealth and fucking hoard resources, they needed racism to uphold capitalism. And that is why we teach people about that racism is a side effect of capitalism. So is sexism, so is homophobia, so all these systemic forms of bigotry exists purely to uphold capitalism. Because if you start breaking away from those ideologies and realize, like Yessie said earlier, that we are all just fucking humans. We're all equal. We're all people. Then you realize that who's really doing all the oppressing is this fucking bourgeoisie upper crust fucking class that has done nothing but harm and genocide and slavery and fucked up shit for their entire existence, just to try to make themselves equal to kings and queens. And they fucking need to let their heads roll just like the kings and queens did.
We did
bring
have
out the guillotines.
Hell yeah. I've said before and I'll say it again. The American Revolution, the American Revolution was a bourgeois conflict. That's all it was. That's really all it fucking was. The only reason why the settlers revolted against England was so they can be the sole benefactors of American imperialism and settler colonialism in the States. That's the only fucking reason. They wanted to be the sole beneficiaries of the exploitation, oppression, subjugation, and the siphoning of the indigenous and African people here. That's it. That's literally it.
And it was progressive in comparison to the feudalism, because under feudalism, all property belonged to the monarchy. All of it. It was up to them to give or take it to the, aristocracy, the landlords and ladies. And they could take it the fuck back at any time and give it to a different one if somebody spoke out against the monarchy, etc. It was all political tools and ploys. So in comparison of actually being able to own personal property and have your own home, etc., it was progressive. However, it came hand in hand with the private property factor that needs to be overthrown, because there's no fucking excuse for anybody's labor to be exploited in order to fucking line the pockets of somebody sitting on their ass going, well, I own the means of production, therefore, you only get to take home a tiny ass fraction of what you're producing. The rest is mine because I own the equipment and the building. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. But going back even to what you were saying earlier too, Comrade Shay, the factors there with the bourgeoisie revolution and it pushing these things in that direction. How do I want to put this? Give me a second to gather my thoughts. You're making some pretty solid points there. Never mind. It's all fucked. How about I sum it up with that? It's all fucked. It was there for a moment and it fucking went. It might boomerang back.
You know what's scary, sisters? You know what's scary?
Huh?
The scary thing is that the Roman Empire never really went away. The Catholic Church is like the last remnant of the Roman Empire. So long as they exist, they're like legally the successors of the Roman Empire. As long as they exist, the Roman Empire never technically went away, in a sense. Right. It's still here.
I do believe they are still the largest property holder on the fucking planet. If not the top one, they're like in the top 3 or some shit. They have amassed so much fucking wealth, and they use that for political power and gain, and it's all fucked.
I have a question, sisters, if you don't want me asking. Because I've been kind of bouncing around because like I'm like wondering like what when did capitalism start coming about? Because I've heard some people say that started coming around the 15th century with during the 15th century or around there. So
it was earlier than that. Give me a second. I'm gonna look it up to see what year it was. So it was under Emperor Constantine that Catholicism was brought into the Roman Empire, and a lot of it altered to kind of merge with the pagan religions, and that's why you see, oh, we're going to pretend that the winter solstice is now Jesus's birthday, and now we're going to pretend that the spring equinox is Easter, when he was fucking put on the cross. And it's like, Easter is the name of a pagan goddess, he fucks. So he basically used it to co-opt the religious beliefs and tried to bring people under monotheism instead of polytheism in order to exert that political control with it. Give me just a second to ask Google what year that was.
So capitalism originated with Constantine?
Yeah.
Really? That's surprising.
He's the one that actually ordered the Septuagint, the 70 priests and scholars, to canonize the Bible itself to spread throughout the Roman Empire, and in doing so had them redact the fuck out of those scrolls in order to use it as a political and sociological tool to control the masses. And that's why it's not until we discovered the apocryphal texts and the Nag Hammadi texts that we could see, oh, wait, the original teachings honored the divine feminine that was completely fucking erased from the canon of the Bible and turned absolutely opposite into misogynistic shit, because that is subjugating half the population right off the bat, where they are subject then to the men of society, and therefore makes it that much easier for the government to exert control, because you only really have to control half of the population, and they'll control the other half for you. And it's, once again, all fucked.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sister Zen, but wasn't the Roman Empire a slave society? Wasn't the Roman Empire a slave economy?
To a certain extent, It was also it was the year 313 when Constantine did that, and the Roman Empire had already been fully established for a long time prior to that. But 313 is when Constantine met with Licinius, the Eastern Emperor, and they issued the Edict of Milan. And that was basically the beginnings of that canonization of the Bible and enforcing Christianity as the legal religion. And now I brain sharded. What was the other thing that you had asked?
I had asked, wasn't the Roman Empire a slave society?
Okay.
Wasn't it a slave economy?
Yes. What they did was go around conquering every other fucking land and culture that they possibly could and swallowing them up. They immediately made prisoners of war into slaves. Anybody who was convicted of crimes that were severe or even vaguely serious, like theft, for example, would pay their penance in fucking slave time. You know, okay, well, you get X number of years of being a slave to pay off your debt until you're a freed person again. And in that regard, at least, it was operated different than later forms of slavery where it's like, okay, you're a fucking slave for life.
Because the Roman Empire practiced indentured servitude. They didn't practice chattel slavery. Chattel slavery came way after. Wait, so Constantine was when capitalism started?
No. Constantine is what brought Christianity into the Roman Empire as a socio-political influence. That was in the 300s. It took until I believe it was like the late 1500s or early 1600s that the capitalist influences started to happen because of, you know, people who were participating in merchant trades and whatnot starting to actually get wealthy from that and become a different layer of aristocracy. And then like the lord and lady type aristocrats were like, well, wait a minute, if you can make hella bank like that, then maybe I can exploit that too. And they weren't, you know, allowed to, under the monarchy, to amass that much wealth. So they had to break away and have a revolution against the monarchy in order to open that door for themselves to become as wealthy as and replace the monarchy. So it took a long time, about 1300 years before it reached that point. But what I was bringing up earlier on that timeline of the factors that came into play, it was that, excuse me, the bourgeoisie and aristocracy revolting around the same time as capitalism was coming into play. And they decided to create the ideology of racism in order to justify and uphold it.
And liberalism as well, because liberalism was created in tandem with the emergence of capitalism, if I remember correctly.
I'd have to look it up, but probably. I mean, controlled opposition is controlled opposition. They're both still capitalist and fascist. So.
Literally. I asked, on the time scale, did capitalism did it come around the 15th century? Was that when it started to come about?
If I remember right, give me a second, I'll Google that too.
Because if I remember correctly, the Roman Empire was a slave society, and after it collapsed, and after it collapsed, the different feudal lords came together to try and quell the slave revolts, which is why after the dissolution of the Roman Empire, that's where all of the that's where all of the feudal lords and the feudal societies came about.
Okay, this says here it's the 16th century when capitalism started.
Gotcha.
With added note here, it says, although the continuous development of capitalism as a system dates only from the 16th century, antecedents of capitalist institutions existed in the ancient world, and flourishing pockets of capitalism were present in Europe during the later Middle Ages. And that's going back to that merchant,
Right. Merchant
trades
class.
going on. Yeah.
Nice.
But
Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So she left. I gotta go.
You got to go?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
I
should
gotta
wrap
go.
this up.
Sorry, Che. I'm so sorry. I was just so interested in finding this out. Thank you so much, sisters, and I highly appreciate you so much.
You're welcome. Anytime. And yeah, have a good evening, Comrade Shay. We'll see you
Okay, Comrade,
soon.
take care.
All
You
power.
too. Yeah, we can
I
wrap
got
this up here.
Tomorrow I'm gonna go get my glasses. I couldn't read today. I couldn't because my eyes been burning. So they got me on experimenting. So they give me these glasses to see how good I could read with them. So I'm gonna have it tomorrow.
Fingers
It costs,
crossed.
you know how much it costs? It costs $9,650 in pesos. Which comes out to how much? Comes up to $170.
Not bad. Not bad
Yeah,
at all. Shit.
Well, when you look at it in pesos, it means a whole lot.
Right. That's a lot of pesos. But
Yeah, that's a lot of pesos. And that's what we call capitalism. And it's full grab.
right. Well,
So
I'm
let me
glad you
go.
get your
And
glasses.
I'll see y'all tomorrow. Y'all gonna have a group tomorrow, right?
Yep.
We'll be reading
Wretched of the
Wretched of the Earth.
Okay,
And we're
I'll
on
be there
we're
tomorrow.
on the last chapter. We're on the last chapter, y'all. I'm super excited.
It's got multiple long sections to it, though. So tomorrow's not the
Okay,
last session.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay, good night. Love y'all.
Good night,
Love you
Shay.
too, Shay.
Love you guys. Mwah.
All power,
Well, everyone,
comrades.
all power to the people. Bye, Sister Zen.
Bye. See you tomorrow.
See ya.